Hi everyone, my name is Gitika Gorthy, and today I'm very honored and excited to be interviewing a very special space champion, Miss Caeley Looney. After graduating from Embry-Riddle Aeronautical University with a BS in Aerospace Engineering, Caeley started working full-time as a Space Mission Analyst at L3Harris Technologies, where she supported their small satellite programs. In 2022, she completed her MS in Space Systems Engineering at Johns Hopkins University. In her last role, Caeley worked as a mission operations engineer at Firefly Aerospace, where she supported their successful commercial lunar lander program, Blue Ghost. Now she's embracing her next engineering challenge as a senior guidance, navigation, and control engineer at Sidus Space, a startup working on building AI-driven satellites, which I'm so curious to learn about because I know the satellite space has been around for a while, but the AI aspect of it will be interesting to talk about. And once her workday is over, Caeley comes home and works on Reinvented Inc. As the founder and CEO of this nonprofit organization, Caeley works to empower young girls to pursue STEM fields through each of Reinvented's three core programs. She was recognized on the 2025 Forbes 30 Under 30 list in the education category for the impact she's made in the STEM education community through her work with Reinvented. Outside of work and running a nonprofit, Caeley loves making and is constantly working on something crazy. Some of her favorite projects include forging a sword, designing a 3D printed light up constellation dress, and building an origami kayak. So cool. So as you can see, Caeley is a visionary leader as well as an incredible engineer, paving the way for the next generation of diverse aerospace leaders. So today I'm excited to learn about her journey into this industry and what keeps her motivated, and what sparked her passion for this field. So welcome, Caeley. Thank you so much for taking your time to do this interview today.
Hi, yeah, no, thank you. I'm also realizing why the space industry uses so many acronyms because half of the things you said on my bio were like a mouthful. I mean, it's only taken what, like 10 years for me to understand why the acronyms exist, but I get it now.
Yeah, no worries. Thank you. I mean, I was reading that and I was like, oh my gosh, she did like just so many things,
Ooh.
so young, and it's just incredible. But I have to start off with, I think the piece that I was connected the most when I first read about your work, which was with Reinvented Inc. And so kind of going a little bit back in time, could you start off by sharing what was your aha moment that sparked your idea for Reinvented Inc. And what is your current work with the organization and how do you see it evolving in the future?
Yeah, I I'll maybe like start all the way back. So I was really lucky. I grew up with both my parents were engineers, and so like I never had these barriers to getting into engineering. I always had someone in the house who was advocating for me to go for my dreams in engineering, or even actively pushing me in that direction. And when I got to college and then, continued into my full-time job, I realized how many women don't have that, that I am very much so the exception. Like that is a very rare case. And then along the way, being a woman in STEM, there are unfortunately a lot of pushback and setbacks to doing that. And I got my degree. Was like, that was really hard. I have this paper now that says that I am a woman in STEM. Like I'm an engineer. I paid a lot of money for this one piece of paper to tell everyone I'm an engineer. And so I entered the workforce thinking like nobody's going to question me now, right? I have a degree in this. And that very much so wasn't the case. And I still got a lot of pushback, being a new grad, being the only woman in the room, being the only Latina or the only like neurodivergent person in the room as well. It was definitely not as easy or as like well of a transition as I had hoped it would be. And so in that moment, I kind of thought, well, I want to do something, but I'm too new to the industry to know how to make a difference for myself. But I know the thing that helped get me here, and that was my parents and the encouragement and having somebody to look up to and somebody to kind of like fall back on. And so I wanted to create that for young girls who I know most of the time didn't have that. And Reinvented was kind of born out of that. So it was born out of a bit of frustration and a bit of anger. But I think that usually a lot of good things and very impactful things are born out of that. And so over the past 6 years, we've reached over 500,000 students across 80 countries and all 50 states. with our magazine, our hands-on program we call Princesses with Power Tools, our YouTube channel, and just kind of everything in between. And it's been very, very fun journey to go from I have no idea what I'm doing. Like I'm an engineer, like I have 2 degrees in engineering and 0 degrees in nonprofit management. And so building up this nonprofit literally from the ground, not knowing anything about how to balance, an organization's budget or how to write a magazine, or like how to even print things. Like I was learning terms like bleed and margins and other like these crazy like CYMK versus RGB and like all these other crazy things that I still don't totally understand, but I understand a lot better than I did 6 years ago. All just to help make STEM education more accessible and relatable for young women. And so that's really where we're at now. We've grown our community, infinitely compared to where I thought we would end up when we first started this. And we just continue to grow, and the mission just continues to be more and more important, especially as other like STEM programs and STEM education has, gone to the wayside or has been kind of removed from the equation for a lot of young women this year. And so we're kind of here trying to help fill in those gaps. And I think that that's probably what our next couple of years is going to look like is keeping our program strong and steady and just continuing to show up for the community that we've built and the girls that count on us in every way that we hope we can.
Wow, that's incredible. I know you said that in such an articulate and short way, but I can only imagine the amount of work it took to kind of learn all of that and to build everything. I know everything doesn't just happen in like a flash. I'm sure it was a lot of reaching out, a lot of networking, a lot of just like late nights. And so, how was that journey? I guess like for you starting something from ground up, for other young students who are interested in kind of starting their own initiatives, how was that journey like for you to start something from ground up? What, being an engineer and not having those skill sets in specifically organization management before, how did you kind of get the tools to be able to grow an organization and actually make your idea come to life? Because I think there's so many young girls out there who want to make a change, and sometimes taking that first step is the hardest part. So, how did you kind of take that first step?
So I think there's a couple components that I mean you're a nonprofit founder too, and so I think you probably share a lot of the same experiences and the milestones along the journey. And I think the biggest one that I will tell people that is my dog is so okay, he's settled down. The one that I think people have the most trouble swallowing is that nonprofits don't work on passion alone. And you're right, like there are infinite amount of late hours. There's time, there's resources, there's expertise, there's so many things that go into building a nonprofit and keeping it going. And passion is definitely the first step. You need to be excited about the mission and the thing in the world that you want to make a difference at. But at the end of the day, just being riled up about a cause is not what is gonna, take it to the next step. And so that is always kind of my number one is like it always sounds cool on paper to start the nonprofit, and I encourage everyone who wants to do it. But know that every step of the way it's hard. Even just filing the paperwork is hard. And there's a lot of pushback to anything and everything in the nonprofit world because anytime you try and make a difference, it means that you're going against the status quo, which means you're fighting for something every single time you pretty much take a breath or open your mouth. And so it's exhausting for a lot of reasons. But it's worth it at the end when you put that impact report together, or you just see a picture of a little girl holding a power tool, and you're like, yep, okay, this is why we did it. And so for me, it was definitely like it was a passion born out of this frustration. That was step number one. But when people, very cheesily say teamwork makes the dream work, they mean it. And so I am an engineer. There are a lot of things I don't know, and I've gotten really good at knowing what I don't know, or knowing that I don't know things, if that makes sense, which honestly is a very difficult thing in the engineering world to recognize. You get surrounded by a lot of smart people who don't want to admit that they don't know everything. And so that took a while for me to kind of get over. But I surrounded myself with other women who are also passionate about the cause, but also came from diverse backgrounds themselves. So we first started, we were a lot of engineers because that was who was in my network and that's who I knew. But now we've grown and we have consultants, we have people who help us from the business aspect, we have people who help us from the fundraising aspect. We've grown our board out to be way more diverse in the nonprofit management space because that is definitely one of my biggest struggling points. Like I can write STEM content and like write tutorials on how to use tools all day long, but hosting a gala or getting a magazine printed, that was a lot harder. And so, yeah, we had to rely on other people, and I think that women do a really it's very hit or miss actually, in that we try to take everything on ourselves, and so there's a really big learning curve to that of I need help and I need to ask for help, and then once I've asked for help and have people ready to help, I need to be willing to accept the help. But nonprofits, especially in diverse like STEM education spaces, especially when I think other women are involved, like it doesn't work without other people there supporting you, without having a team of people who share in the passion and want to put in the hours and the hard work. And there's also the finding the right people to go along with it, but the passion really helps make those decisions because you know who's excited about what you're doing. And you kind of just go from there. But yeah.
Yeah, no, I think that's perfect. I think, as you mentioned, I started an organization, but that's something I'm constantly battling with every single day. And I'm sure there's so many people who are trying to figure that out. So it's really comforting to hear that own experience and that journey of building it. It's just really impressive, again, what you've been able to do. I'm a huge fan of the work, so you definitely have inspired me. And one of the things also, apart from Reinvented, that really caught my eye was your work with Sidus Space. I've always I've been to the various satellite conferences, and I've always felt that this space has been incredibly overcrowded, right? There have been so many satellite companies. We've sent many satellites up into space right now. And so there are a lot of companies doing the work of what we need, like setting up satellites, launching, collecting data. And then there's just so much data that needs to be analyzed now. So I'm curious a little bit more about your role and your work at Sidus Space, and especially being AI driven. I feel like that's a very new concept. So I'm curious to just learn a little bit more about it.
Yeah, so I actually I started in satellites, and so when I was at L3Harris, I did small satellites pretty exclusively. And then you're right, it got really overcrowded. It was just kind of like plug and play, do the same thing all day long. I got really bored. I did a lunar lander for like a year and a half, and that was like a totally different beast. And then I heard about Sidus, and Sidus is a women-owned, women-run company, which was like one of the number one things for me. And I had heard our CEO, Carol Craig, her name in the STEM education community here on the Space Coast while I was living here working at L3Harris. And so like they were kind of been on my radar. I was really nervous about going back to satellites because I remember how bored I was. And then I kind of heard their AI theme to a lot of what they're doing, and kind of fell in love with some of the mission and some of the stuff that they're trying to work on. And so currently the AI component to our satellites is in imaging and data analysis. And so where a lot of things can happen on the ground, we're trying to do a lot of stuff like in space. And so like one example that like I had heard during like while I was going through recruitment and like signing on to join the company was we have imaging capabilities on board that are taking images of ships already so we can help identify where various ships are and like potentially aid in like rescue missions and things like that too. But while we're doing that, at the same time, we're taking pictures of like all of these large areas of the ocean and could very easily pick up for other things like oil spills. And that was kind of the big one for me. So if we can use AI in space to detect oil spills here on Earth, like that felt impactful. That felt big. And it brought me back to the like I love space because it's space. And I love the exploration, the curiosity, and the like complete unknown of it all. And so I'm always pro anytime space can benefit Earth, but at the end of the day, like my hot take is like even if it's not directly benefiting Earth, I'm still gonna love space because I love the challenge. But this was something where I could take my expertise and I could still explore and do like all of this really cool, challenging stuff, but I can still be doing it in a way that's impactful to the things that like I like the planet that I'm currently living on. And we work on a ton of other missions too. We're building out a lunar profile and missions and like working on potential like going beyond the moon. Like we have big hopes and dreams for a lot of our missions, which is really cool working at a startup that really just wants to do the cool stuff. But AI has been really core to what we do because of, all of this ability to analyze data and do it in a way that is efficient and impactful at the same time.
That's incredible. Yeah, I know like a few, just like even a few years ago, I was having a conversation with someone in the satellite space, and the biggest issue was that they were talking about this idea of analyzing all the data that's coming out or being able to analyze images better. And now with like the AI boom and so many, capabilities have increased just in this past year, and it's like exponentially getting better every single day. I'm so excited to see what Sidus Space and other companies with AI, what they'll be able to achieve. I don't know if you have any thoughts about right now the startup space and how that feels like to you. Like, what is the current climate in your opinion, and how do you see specifically space startups being treated right now? Do you think this is a good time for space startups? Do you think we could do a better job? Just, I'm kind of curious about your overall thoughts.
Yeah. You know what? Honestly, I've had a lot of mixed feelings for the past couple of months. I think that NASA funding getting pulled comes with a lot of baggage. And so, for one, it means that I think that there's a lot of room for growth and exploration within the commercial space. There's a lot that NASA no longer is doing, and that means that there's a lot of slack that has to get picked up. And there are more than enough people out there excited about space who want to do that work. And so I think that this is a really good opportunity for some of the commercial companies to get their hands on stuff that has been historically very government tied. But at the same time, we're seeing a lot of like media go against the concept of space and space education and even climate change and all these other things that like are just science based and science backed, that being anything related to STEM, especially in the space industry, is scary because there are so many unknowns with where money is going, what is going to hit the news cycle next, and so it's mixed. Like there are definitely some pros for the startup world, but at the same time, there's a lot working against them with media and just kind of how the public views the space industry as a whole right now. But it doesn't mean the missions stop or that the need for the missions stop. So the gap is still there.
Right. Yeah, no, that's perfectly worded. I recently came across like someone's LinkedIn post kind of echoing a similar sentiment of, right now the space education space is actually, we felt like a few years ago, like this was starting to be perceived differently, space
Yeah.
overall and like the industry. And it's been kind of slowing down recently, and like the narrative has been changed. And so really a lot of people are trying to reshift that focus and emphasizing, the verticals and the benefits that space has for Earth, for everyone, not just a select few. So it'll be interesting to see how it continues to change. But thanks for giving your insights on that. And as you're talking, it's so like evident how you are like a true engineer at heart, and you just have all this passion for space. And I know earlier you were mentioning how you grew up with parents who are engineers, and that kind of sparked really your love for engineering because you kind of grew up with it and you just were like, this is what I'm gonna do. But I am curious, like, did you have an aha moment that inspired your, spark for space specifically, like a movie, a book, or something like that?
No. So it's actually I think it's a funny story. My mom thinks it's a funny story, but I grew up around parents who were engineers, and so naturally as a kid, who like any other kid thought my parents were like the least cool parents on the planet. And so to me, immediately that was like, well, obviously engineering is the least cool thing I could possibly do. Right? If both of my parents are engineers, like this is so uncool. And so I wanted to be a fashion designer for a really long time. And now that I've like grown into like this making phase and like realizing how big art is in the world of STEM, and how they go really hand in hand, I'm getting back into some of the fashion stuff and like how we can do this collaboration of art and engineering. But I didn't so much after sixth grade. And so I was taking so like my mom was very, what is the right word here? So my parents were very much so like you have the dream, you do it. Like you you can do whatever you want, right? It was always the sky is not the limit. You can, and they were encouraging on everything that I wanted to do. And so they enrolled me in sewing classes, they like went to like my little fashion shows, like they loved all of that. But when I didn't grow out of like the pink sparkly tutu phase come like middle school, they were like, this is great. And like we're gonna keep advocating for you in fashion. So this is good. But I'm gonna drag you to a robotics meetup. And I'm like, I don't want to go to a robotics meet. That's what you do. I don't want to do that. And she did it anyway. And I saw the robot, like literally, it was first robotics, and I saw like one of the robots, and it wasn't even big. It was like one of the little Lego ones, like running around on a table, and I was like, this is the coolest thing I've ever seen. And so that was kind of the aha moment for me. It was like I'd always heard about engineering, and I always like kind of was STEM adjacent from all the conversations my parents would have home. And we had blueprints up around our house of like fighter jets and like these big aircraft carriers that my mom would work on. And so it was always there kind of in my like peripheral vision, but it was never something that I saw in practicality. It was just always like, this is the thing my parents do. And like, it kind of looks like the things on the wall or the sounds like the things they talk about. But like when I touched the robot and like actually saw it moving around, I was like, whoa, this is really cool. I want to build a robot. And so I did, and I like stuck with First Robotics for 6 years and learned about a whole bunch of different types of robots through that process. Loved robots that work here on Earth. For some reason, really disliked working with robots that ran around underwater. And then learned about robots that got sent to Mars and was like, this is it. This is what I love the most. And that was the push for me to go into aerospace engineering. Was literally just I fell in love with the Mars rover, and built my career kind of out of that. And haven't looked back since. So
That's incredible. You know what's funny? I also did FLL, like junior FLL,
okay.
FLL, FTC. I remember those little EV3 robots and like work.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep, that is what got me into engineering. That's what made me want to go and be like working in the space industry was just that tiny little robot on its little like table, like literal like folding table sized board. It was just seeing it in action doing something that like I could tell it to do, you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah, I know. I remember those days too. They were like, it was just amazing. Even if you started off like doing block programming or telling, oh, go forward these many times, like it was just so fun. And I totally can see like how that shaped your life. So that it's amazing that we have programs like this that
Yeah.
continue to inspire young students because you don't really know that you love something until you take part in something like that and you actually build something and work on it. And you're like, hey, this is pretty cool, you know? So I'm so glad you had that opportunity. And in your journey, working with both Reinvented and just navigating your own path, your career journey, have you had any obstacles? And if so, how are you able to overcome them? I was mentioning to you before our interview, I think it's so easy to look on someone's LinkedIn or, someone's bio and be like, oh gosh, she was like, she's so smart. She knew what she was doing from day one and she just figured it out. But I think there's a lot to the story than we see online. So I am curious if you've had any obstacles and how you overcame them, more importantly.
Yeah. No, 100%. And I have like two threads that I think have kind of caused the many an obstacle for me. I mean, one is just being a woman in STEM. We talked about that a little bit already. Um, I didn't grow up with it, and so when I got to college and all of a sudden my professors were like, you're never going to survive here if you can't get this one simple little lesson. And it was just because I didn't look like every other student in the room. It's incredibly discouraging. And I know a lot of people have heard of this concept of imposter syndrome. And I don't like the term overcoming or like beating imposter syndrome because I don't think that's a thing that us as women are capable of doing. I think it's an ongoing battle and will be for our like entire lives. But it certainly doesn't help the cause when it's not just inside your own head, when it's other people in the room who are actively discouraging you from pursuing the thing you are so passionate about. And you have to go out and be proactive in reminding yourself why you belong, why you love what you're doing, and have to find this passion over and over again every time someone squashes it. That admittedly, like most men will never experience that squash dream like that in their lives. And so that was a really big one for me. But the other one was I'm neurodivergent, so I'm on the spectrum. I have ADHD, and I didn't know about any of this until I was pretty much already an adult. And so I went through high school, like there were definitely these flags, right? Like I always like test taking was never a thing I was really good at. I hated hugs. That should have probably been a big one. I was really picky about my food touching. Like there were a lot of stereotypical flags in there, but it didn't really hit me until I got to college because the safety net of my parents being able to manage my schedule for me, keep me on track, make sure my routine was very strict and set in place, the things that help people who are neurodivergent, I didn't have any of that anymore. And so I was failing classes. I failed physics twice, like my physics 3 class twice before I passed it. And it was simply because like I didn't understand how to test take. I couldn't pay attention in class, like, and I didn't know what it was either, right? Like nobody was there saying, Caeley, you have ADHD, or like Caeley, you're on the spectrum. Like here are the things that like here's how you fix this, or not fix it, but here's how you counteract some of these things and get better. And it wasn't until one of my professors, like 2 years in, was like, I failed a test in my statics class. And he was like, he pulled me into his office. He's like, Keely, you're one of my best students. What happened? And I'm like, I don't know. I studied really hard. I feel like I just like couldn't focus on the test, and it was really frustrating. And like I think I mentioned something like someone's foot was tapping the whole time, and like that was like the clue in for him. And he was like, here, can you like I'm gonna leave the room. I'm gonna turn the lights off. Like I'm gonna give you like one of a previous year's tests, and like just relax, and you have all the time you need. Just like take it and let me know how it goes. And I did, and I got like an A. Like it was like I got barely anything wrong, and he was like, what was different? And I'm like, I don't know, I was able to focus. It was so much less stressful. Like the lights were off, like I wasn't overwhelmed by everything. And he was like, okay, and he introduced me to like the counseling center at on school. He literally like he walked me to the counseling center because he knew it was like something scary, and he introduced me to this concept of like I think that you might be neurodivergent. I think you might have ADHD. He's like it's nothing to be ashamed of. It's nothing to be scared of. It's just I think that this is what's going to help you be successful is now we know what this is. And the counseling center, which isn't, most schools have one. It's not exactly equipped to diagnose you with ADHD, but they are equipped with being able to get you to someone who can help you navigate that. And so they did. And I remember the first time like walking into my next class after finally having like the full support system and the diagnosis, and it was my orbital mechanics class. And my professor was deriving one of the rocket equations on the board, and he was doing this for like the whole class. Like he was doing the full derivation from scratch. And like 20 minutes into class, he was like scratching his head, like, something's not adding up here. I don't know what I did wrong. And he like went back to his notes, and I raised my hand and I was like, you have a negative sign where that should have been a positive sign, like 3 steps back. And he was like, you were paying attention? Like, what? You caught that? And I was like, it's crazy how much easier it is to be successful in school and in life for that matter when you know what you're up against. And so I had so many little moments like that. And again, you take the imposter syndrome, you take all the people who are discouraging you, you take failed grades that are like actively in your face saying you're not good at this, you're not an engineer. And then you have no idea what's going wrong. And then one day someone tells you exactly what's going wrong, and you're able to fix a lot of this, and you're able to find ways to cope and do better, knowing that this is exactly how your brain kind of works now. And you succeed from that. And it's taken me a really long time, but I've like grown past what I think would be like this bare minimum succeeding, and really like taking the autism and the ADHD and fueling it directly into the work that I'm doing. And so I went from being on like not successful because I would pick up on all of these little details that would keep me away from focusing on the main work. But now I'm in careers where I'm reliant on my brain going down a million and one different directions. In mission operations, it's like you need to know every single possible thing that could go wrong on the spacecraft, and you need to know all of the tangentials on how you could get there. And so now my autism works for me because I get to use that part of my brain and saying, well, okay, well, this reaction wheel stopped working. Okay, well, here's all the 30 different possibilities that like my brain was already freaking out about anyway. And so it's been an interesting journey of lots of ups and downs to get to a point where it's like, now I know, now I can succeed, and now I can use it. But it definitely was not always that way. And failing tests and failing classes and going through that cycle of hardship, especially when you're in college and you're going from like I was an honor roll student in high school, thanks to a lot of the support. Like that's a stark contrast, and you really like it hits hard. Um, but obviously, 2 degrees later, and like many a year in the industry, and I've learned that grades don't matter as much and the other voices and you're like that are telling you that you don't belong don't matter as long as you think you belong. And yeah.
Wow. I'm really incredibly inspired. I want to start off by like saying thank you for sharing that and for being so honest and open because this is not like a unique experience. There are so many students, girls, boys, everyone who undergo similar situations in
Yeah.
college that lead them to quit their major. I know so many people who have shared that they've, quit their major because they've, just didn't know how to approach an exam, approach a class, or this feeling of imposter syndrome that just made them feel like they didn't belong. And just kind of for those who are going through it right now, if they can hear someone like you who's been through it and has overcome it and actually used it to equip themselves and use it as a superpower to do what they're doing even better, I think it's incredibly inspiring. And just like the way you've turned this around to use it to your advantage, but also being like cognizant of like, oh, here is what my body and my mind is thinking, and here's what I can do to like actively use it or actively make sure I'm doing the right thing and I'm like not going to fail my exams and I'm going to pay attention in this particular way. I think learning yourself and the way your brain thinks is so important. And just realizing that if you love something, you can do it. And clearly, you loved aerospace engineering so much that you like pushed through and you kept doing it and you're doing incredible stuff now. So I'm positive that if there are any students who are, or even adults who are going through a similar situation in their life and just hear this from someone who's incredibly accomplished like yourself, it will mean the world to them. So really, again, thank you so much for sharing that.
Yeah. I mean, so one of my favorite tweets of all time, and I feel like a lot of people have seen it, but it's from one of the engineers who works on the Mars rovers, and this was like reading it was like one of my full circle moments, right? Because that's what got me into it, and it was like, um, we named the Mars rovers like Curiosity and Perseverance because that's what it takes to accomplish things in space. Like they're not out there naming the Mars rovers A plus or I passed my physics exam because it's not about that. It's about being curious. It's about perseverance. It's about, all of those other soft skills that like the space industry is founded on, right? It's about innovation and all of those things over everything else. So,
I love that. I actually have never heard of this quote before, and now I'm gonna
oh
use
my God, now I'm gonna have to go find this tweet for you. I don't even have a Twitter account anymore. It'll be
it.
okay. I'll find it.
No,
I'll find
it's
it.
okay. I will now be saying this to everyone that I meet because that is one of the best things I've heard like in a long time. So that
It was good.
yeah, and so now that we're able to learn a little bit about your work, your incredible work with both Reinvented and your work with Cyrus Space, and with Sidus Space and what you've been doing, my last and final question for you is if you could go back in time and give your younger self a piece of advice, what would that advice be? It could be about
Ooh,
anything.
oof.
To everyone. So they always have to like kind of rewind and be like, "Oh, my younger self, what would I say?"
Yeah, so many things. Oh boy. No, I think my biggest one, and like it's one that I'm still learning, is that you don't have to change anything about yourself to belong in a room. And I have been told by many people over the course of my career and even just being a student, to change the way I look or to change my personality or to change the way I think and act, so I can fit in, so that I can look the part of an engineer because apparently that there's a look out there that I need to follow. But at the end of the day, it doesn't make me better at my job if I choose to not wear heels or if I choose to not do the winged eyeliner today, kind of a thing. And actually, it's almost detrimental. Like I have found that if you're not showing up to a job 100% yourself, there's no way that you're ever going to put 100% of yourself into the job. There's no way you're ever going to be happy doing a job where you can't even be who you truly are. And this is something that so many women I've met give up this huge part of themselves and it's a sacrifice they make to be an engineer, and it's one that they don't have to make. It's one that society pressures them into making, and I work hard through Reinvented and all the things we do there to help them remember that nobody but them can make that decision for them. But it's one that like I failed myself on so many times, and now, like even now, like I will still try to conform if I know I'm going to be in a room of like high-powered male executives because I just want to fit in. But that's not the way to become an engineer. And it's something that I hope the entire industry as a whole starts to shift in so that everyone who's already there and is already trying to just fit in sees that fitting in actually doesn't look like looking like a dude at work.
That's the perfect way, I think, to really wrap up this interview that like embodies truly your spirit. I think it's not even just in the space industry, but honestly in every aspect of your life. There's so many situations, especially when you're a younger, younger person, a younger adult trying to find your way in life. It's so easy to want to conform and to do what society expects you to do or to dress the way society expects you to dress in certain situations, in certain rooms. But again, realizing who you are and what you like, and that comes first, whether that's, showing up in a dress and heels or showing up in, just like pants, jeans, and sneakers. Like there are two different ways, and there's nothing that's correct or wrong. So I love that statement. And I love, again, Caeley, I told you at the beginning of this interview, you inspired me. You inspired me so much, and you were like, this interview has inspired me even more with what you've done and what you are doing. And I'm so excited to see how your work will continue to grow and the impact that you'll continue to have on so many young girls around the world. So thank you so much for taking the time to talk to us and to share your story. It was an honor to be able to learn more about you.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. I love talking with you.
Thank you.